Welcome, Georgia Key students. Mr. Brugge here, again. I'm at home, you're at home, again. This little video is about flowers, insects, and spiders. Really cool stuff. These are all pictures I've taken in my yard. You too can find these things in your yard, in your neighborhood, in a park. And it's your chance to go out and see if you can see some of the things I've seen. Enjoy. A Buckeye is a name for someone from Ohio. This butterfly didn't come from Ohio, it just came from my backyard. Look at those eye spots. They might scare away a bird that wanted to eat this butterfly, don't you think? Bees and flowers go together like peanut butter and jelly, or teachers and students. They benefit each other. The flower gives the bee a little drink of sugar water, called nectar. The bee takes the pollen and transfers it to another flower where it can produce seeds. We call this a symbiotic relationship. Here's an iris that I watched open over a period of about 6 hours. Kind of like a really finely wrapped birthday present. Petals unfurl, and when you're done, there's the flower, the iris, for everyone to see. You too can watch a flower open. You don't have to stay there for 6 hours. Come back every hour. See what it looks like. Has it changed? Be a scientist. Make observations. This is a flame skimmer dragonfly. It's 1 in a million. It's estimated that there are about 1 million different species of insects in the world. And those are just the ones that have been identified. There might be up to 10 million different species of insects. There's a lot to see out there. Take a look around. This little flower is an aster. Think about that name. What other words sound like aster? Astronaut, astronomy. In Greek, aster means star. This little flower is clearly a star. Always have to think about how to spell praying mantis. Is it pray, like to prey on your victims to grab them? Or is it pray as in prayer? Turns out, because the way this insect's front legs are folded, it looks like it's in prayer. So it's a praying mantis. Here's a Sphinx Moth looking for a sweet treat. It uses that long tube called a proboscis, just like a straw, to get the nectar from the flowers. This is a Sphinx Moth. Notice that long tube called a proboscis, which means nose. It uses that to get down into the flower and find that nectar, that sweet treat. Look around. You may see one of these in the evening. You might be able to guess when I took this picture. It may well have been 4 o'clock. They're named this because they open in the late afternoon. You might see these in Albuquerque soon. There are many, many different kinds of beetles in the world. It's estimated that 25% of all animal species are beetles. This is the largest one I've ever found. It's harmless. It might do some damage to the roots of my ponderosa pine, however. Here's another scary-looking insect that I find at my house on occasion, mostly at night. It's a Vinagaroon. It's called a Vinagaroon because it's able to spray out a little bit of acetic acid, that's the fancy name for vinegar, out of its rear end. It's a protective thing. It will scare away a dog or a coyote or maybe even a person. It won't hurt you. It's just looking for insects to eat. Sunflowers have a fancy science name. We call them heliotropes. Helio means sun, trope means to move. What that means is they follow the sun during the day. They start facing the sun and they continue to watch the sun. Much like my dog, he moves from room to room to wherever the sun is. Maybe he's a heliotrope. Here's our state flower, the yucca. It's a beautiful flower, a great state flower. The deer will visit and eat those flowers right before they open. Rarely do I get a picture because the deer love them. The name of the 10-line June beetle tells you everything you really need to know. There are 10 lines there, you can't see them all, and you should expect to see them in June. Keep your eyes out. Here's a checkered white butterfly. I've seen dozens and dozens of these just recently. You might see them too at your house. They flutter around, they seem to fly in random patterns, but they really do have a goal in mind, and that's to find a flower. If you look at that picture on the left, you can see the proboscis, the nose. That's what it uses, that straw-like device. Lets it have some of that sweet nectar. Everyone calls this little insect a ladybug, but it's really not a bug, it's a beetle. In Britain, they call them ladybirds, and it's certainly not a bird. It's a very beneficial little beetle. You may not see a cicada this summer, but I guarantee you'll hear them buzzing in the trees later. They spend a number of years in the ground, they come out to mate, and the buzzing is part of that whole process. They buzz a lot. Here's a little poppy that was growing all over my neighborhood just recently. The whole point of a flower is to produce seeds. That's the point, to produce more flowers next season. Flowers produce seeds, and sometimes those seeds are surrounded by tasty stuff. Take that tomato on the left. My family didn't get to eat it because a deer found it first. Look at the prickly pear on the right. That, too, is edible, sometimes called a tuna. Many spiders build webs. Take a look around. I'll bet you can find a web or two in your neighborhood. Here's an orb weaver wrapping up a moth that got caught in its web. There's fascinating stuff to see when you watch spiders. This is probably the smallest spider web I've ever seen, maybe 1.5 inches across. If you look carefully, that's the spider, right there at the center. Here's the largest spiderweb I've ever seen at my house, built on the back deck. Built by an orb weaver. The spiderweb itself is maybe 2.5, 3 feet across. The lines that hold the spiderweb in place go 3, 4, 5, 6 feet away. That's a big web. I hope this little video has made you think a little bit about nature and what's outside. Take time, observe. Our world is filled with wonder.